Welcome to Spicer and Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, Sean, Democrats have been waiting a long time for this day to come to take their shots at Attorney General Bill Barr, But the Attorney General, he defended his integrity against what he says are just Democrats painting him as President Trump's puppet. One of today's key features was him strongly defending the president's position to protect federal buildings that we've seen lately that have been attacked.
Yeah, that's right, Lindsay. I mean, Barr dished it out better than they tried to hit it. It was amazing. And while there was a long list of hot topics that was discussed during the hearing, the Attorney General was pressed by lawmakers over his decision to send federal officers into the U.S. cities that were dealing with these violent rioters since the killing of George Floyd. These guys were attacking buildings. They were federal buildings. And he was talking about why they were there to defend federal property. Take a listen to AG Barr in his opening statement.
In the wake of George Floyd's death, violent rioters and anarchists have hijacked legitimate protests to wreak senseless havoc and destruction on innocent victims.
All right, joining us now is author of Above the Law, the inside story of how the Justice Department tried to subvert President Trump, and the former acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker. Matt, welcome to the show.
Glad to be with you, Sean.
All right, Matt, just what did you think about today?
Well, I thought you saw a lot of the fake news kind of dissolve and break at the iceberg, the rock that is Bill Barr. I mean, he sort of dispatched many of these kind of conspiracy theories about how a president's tweet impacted his work at the Department of Justice, and I thought he was superb. He was unflappable, and it just really demonstrated kind of how not serious Democrats are in the Judiciary Committee to actually address any of these issues, but to just complain and to try to advance their ultra-liberal agenda.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was unflappable, and it was funny. I don't even think it was a hearing, though, Matt, because Democrat after Democrat would sit there and take shots at him and then say, my time has expired. And he kept saying, give me a shot at answering the question. And when he did, he came back at them strong and logically and forcefully. But I don't think the Democrats actually wanted the answer to any of those questions.
No, and this is what I experienced a little over a year ago in my House Judiciary Committee hearing, where all they wanted to do is grandstand to make up their own convenient facts and conspiracy theories that somehow advance their political agenda instead of getting to the truth and how actually to accomplish the American people's agenda. And so, I really I thought Bill Barr did a great job today. I was proud to have shook his hand and handed him the reins of the Department of Justice last year, and I think it demonstrated why it's good to have a steady hand like him in charge.
Absolutely. Matt, you mentioned the news coverage of this, and so much of it has been about these federal stormtroopers going into cities, taking them over and berating folks. I think that the Attorney General made a very strong case that federal officers, and that's what they are federal public employees that used to be defended by the Democrats, by the way. These folks went in there to defend federal property that was not being defended by the local and state officials because of poor leadership.
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job explaining what's happening in Portland. The fact that the federal courthouse has been under assault for over 60 days now. And I think he painted a very clear picture of not only the cost that the U.S. Marshals are having to expend to defend those assets, but also Homeland Security in partnership and the abuse that they're taking. The weapons that are being used, slingshots were used as an example, high-powered slingshots and other high-powered fireworks, professional fireworks and those types of things. These cause damage, and the lasers being pointed in the eye. So, I mean, I admire these officers. They are civilian agents from the U.S. Marshals and the Department of Homeland Security that are defending the courthouse in Portland. And then the other ones that have gone out across the country to try to quell some of these other violent crimes, especially gun crimes that are happening in our major cities. And so I think the Department of Justice is making all the right steps. We cannot give the mob the courthouse in Portland so they can burn it to the ground. That is just not acceptable. And this president, as you know, Sean, will never stand for that.
Matt, thank you for coming and sharing your perspective and for your service, by the way, for making sure that Bill Barr had such a great transfer of power between you and him. Thanks for your service. Look forward to seeing the book.
We'll do it again. Thanks, Sean.
All right. For more on this, I want to turn to the chairman of the American Conservatives Union, Matt Schlapp. Matt, the second Matt in a row. Matt, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Sean. Congrats on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt, my favorite part of this hearing today was when Jim Jordan started it off showing a video montage of all of the, quote, mostly peaceful protests. I absolutely loved it. What do you think?
I agree. I think we all have to get a lot smarter in explaining what's really going on around the country. As we know, nothing captures something better than video. So brilliant move on Jim Jordan's part. But you know this, Sean, the tragedy of these violent protests are a lot of people have been murdered, including a lot of kids of color. I mean, this chaos in the cities that's been set loose, it's an early indication of what America with socialist rule would actually look like.
Matt, the thing that I thought was hysterical is I finally thought for the first time the CNNs and the MSNBCs were going to have to be forced to show what's really going on there. Later do I find out by somebody else, they turned it off. They pulled away from the hearings. The mainstream media is so in denial of allowing their viewers to see what's really going on. That's, I think, the biggest struggle that conservatives are up against right now.
Yeah, so there's this great quote that's attributed to many intellectuals, but this whole idea that I disapprove of what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. This was a foundational block of liberalism throughout societies, throughout Western civilization. What you have in America today with this cancel culture is if I disagree with you, I'm going to destroy you. And when you look at CNN and MSNBC, they're actually breaking the law because they're not giving any equal time to both campaigns. They're doing everything they can, which I think could be considered, I think senators need to really look at this, and all these media outlets, they're actually giving corporate donations to one side, which is the Joe Biden side. And that's really not what using the public airwaves should be about.
Matt, you're the president of the American Conservative Union. Obviously, you guys fight for smaller government. Right now, the Senate just released $1 trillion additional stimulus package that takes the current $600 a week benefit that people receive, brings it down to $200, but it starts at $1 trillion. We know it's only going to go up from here. Are you concerned about how much money we're pumping out?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I do think as a conservative and as a person that believes that government should be limited in its scope and powers, that we did have a unique historical event with this pandemic. No longer a pandemic anymore, thank God. But people were not allowed to commence in commerce and open up their businesses. And that was an economic taking, and they needed to have a financial settlement for not being able to do their work. And I do worry that we don't need to go through that again. The doctors, the public health experts were wrong. They said if we shut everything down, that would really stop the virus. Clearly, that didn't work. And the way that we should try to make sure people are able to pay their bills is to allow them to have customers, to allow them to be open, allow schools to be open, allow people like you, Sean, and your great wife, and Mercy and I, with our 5 kids, that if we can send them to school, we can more fully go back to our economic lives. Now, maybe we'll never do it the same. Maybe there'll be social distancing and masking and people not shaking hands so much, but we can do this. What we cannot do is shut the economy down again. And what the left wants to do is shut down schools, even though everyone who's an expert in the field says that's bad for kids, so that they can shut down the economy. They're shutting down the presidential campaign as much as they can, all because of Trump derangement syndrome and their desire to get Joe Biden in the White House. And I still think that a majority of Americans will push back on the politicization of science.
Yeah. Matt, you mentioned your wife. You and your wife, Mercy, have been huge supporters of the president. I want to show you a clip of what Dick Morris said yesterday in terms of giving the president and his supporters a piece of advice. Take a listen.
Unless there is a real reduction in the extent of the virus, Trump's reelection is in trouble. If there is a reduction, his reelection is a foregone conclusion. But I don't think he can win in October with 70,000 new cases a day.
Matt,
yeah, I don't. This will shock you. I don't agree with Dick Morris.
but the thing, I during that moment, I was a little taken back. But his point is, if we can wear a mask and socially distance and do all the stuff that gets the curve down, that benefits the president. What do you think of what he's made? What his case is here?
Well, I told everybody who likes to poke at me on social media and stuff, I'll wear a Ziploc storage baggie to get this economy rolling and get us out of our houses and get the kids in school. I think we all, even if we are trying to use common sense about our own health and the health of our kids, we do realize that there are trade-offs, right, to getting the economy open, and I want to open it. And the problem with all these questions of new cases, Sean, and you know this, you were at the White House, you know what it's like to have all the experts at your fingertips. The experts don't know what the cases are because the hospitals are categorizing a lot of patients who've now been going to these hospitals to get the elective surgery that they needed to get a long time ago are often lumped into the idea that we're not flattening the curves and our hospitals are getting filled. One of the reasons why our hospitals are getting filled in certain areas is because people can come back and take care of the medical procedures they should have taken care of before. You know what happened to my mom? She's lost 5 or 6 really great friends in their 80s in Kansas, not from Chinese corona, but from the ramifications of not getting to the hospital or the doctor soon enough with other problems, even though they didn't have corona. How are those deaths categorized? What I fear is that there's a lot of lumping in. And the fact is this, we know that the death rates overall in the country, we're not seeing the types of tragic circumstances like we saw in New York City. In New York, where the governor literally put the sick people in with the old people. I don't know why he thought that was wise, but he did it. And that was done in other blue state governor states as well. But I think what we're going to see, I believe, is that you're going to see more people getting the virus because we're testing so much, and you're going to see more people surviving an interaction with exposure with the virus or actually getting the virus. And over the long run, I fear that's the way to beat this thing, is to literally have individuals confront it and beat it when they're in their best health situation. If they're not in good health, then they ought to stay quarantined and away from people who could potentially give it to them.
Appreciate your comments, Matt. Matt Schlapp, president of the American Conservative Union. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, guys, Matt just brought this up, but the surge in COVID cases, is this going to be a big problem for folks headed to Florida for the winter? Up next, we're going to talk to the state's lieutenant governor about whether or not snowbirds are going to go down south this winter. This winter.